Hello, Gold participants and listeners from around the world. I'm Kristen Schwartz, licensed midwife and MC for Gold Learning. And I'm here today chatting with Carole Hervé about her upcoming presentation, Could Breastfeeding Help Overcoming Sensory Food Aversion? Welcome, Carole.
Thank you, Christine, for your warm welcome. And I'm so glad to be here with you. It's a pure delight to be one of your presenters this year.
And we are so glad to having you, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to sitting here with me and chatting about your upcoming presentation. But before we go into all this information about the presentation and all the good stuff there, tell our listeners, where in the world are you, Carole?
I live in the beautiful city of Paris in France, you know, the Eiffel Tower and all this. And I'm so lucky to see so many people from around the world all the time.
And you're making us jealous here. It is March right now. Is it spring in Paris already?
Spring is starting. We see the trees blooming around here. It's still a bit chilly, but it's all fine.
That's wonderful. It's beautiful over there, and yeah, you made us all quite a little bit of jealous. That
Come and see us. Come and visit us.
we will.
I'll do a tour with you. I'm happy to do it with you all.
You will have quite a few gold delegates knocking at your door soon, Carole.
Why not? Why not? That can be so exciting. Yeah.
Right. And so tell us a little bit about your background here. What is your background, your professional journey, and tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're up to these days, and what you would like to share about maybe your hobbies or private life as well.
Okay, where should I start? Well, professionally, I studied to become a communications manager, but truly, where it all started is by being a mother. I'm the mother of 3 beautiful children. The eldest is now 18, my goodness. The second is 15 years old, and the third is 12. When I was a young mother, my first breastfeeding experience was quite different and quite a challenge. And when the second child was born, I went into, I opened the door of a Lactation meeting and I never left. So I decided to become a LLL leader. And then while I was studying to be a mother-to-mother support group leader, I discovered that beautiful job of a lactation consultant. So I decided, because I like to go deeply into the literature, to study more. So a few years later, I became a lactation consultant. At that time, I didn't know I would make it my own job, but it's such a treasure. It's such a dream to support mothers that it's really become part of my personality. Part of my day is to support families, to support mothers, and some people believe that I'm like a coach, it's such a pleasure to see mothers smile again after a consultation, to see they connect again or better with their baby. So today I'm a lactation consultant from 9 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and then, because I love my former job, I'm also a communications manager. So usually my kids say, okay, on Sunday mornings you are the communications manager, and truly I work there in that field, and I organize something like 22 venues, conferences around the year, every year, for different purposes. And it's always a pleasure to change environments and to meet people and to help them live through the breastfeeding experience and enjoy it. So that's what I do in my daily life. And so on a daily basis, I see lots of mothers, and recently I've been seeing that I couldn't welcome all the mothers that were sent to me. So I enlarged, to say so, my practice, and 2 lactation consultants have been joining me to work, that are Nathalie Endelman and Dr. Muriel Mermillot, 2 beautiful women who I love working with. So nowadays we're a team and we support mothers in Paris and in the West Indies, because Dr. Mermillot is in the West Indies, in Guadeloupe. So we have the pleasure of seeing the Eiffel Tower and the beautiful sun of the French West Indies.
That sounds absolutely delightful, and how wonderful that you were able to, make your practice bigger and work in a nice team with what sounds like 2 wonderful women there, and also that you still have your other life as a communications manager. Do these worlds ever interlace? Do you ever get clients from when you work as as a communications manager? Do you ever meet like somebody who just had a baby or is pregnant, and that comes up?
Well, that could be. Actually, this has happened sometimes last year. What I do in communications is I work for breastfeeding pumping. How do you call them? The pump.
Pumping,
The pump,
breast pump.
pumping, the breast pump, yes, a breast pump renting company, and this company didn't want to tell healthcare professionals that they didn't know. So we said, okay, why don't we do some public relations and maybe improve the information around breastfeeding, and maybe eventually more women may breastfeed. So this has started like 5 years ago, and it's been going on very well since. So it's still the breastfeeding field, but this time I see healthcare professionals. And sometimes they say, oh, you're in Paris and I'm in Toulouse, or I'm in Marseille. So maybe I could send you someone who I know there, and maybe we could build up this network and see how we can reinforce ourselves. And so the aim really with the conferences is not to promote my expertise or my practice. It's to promote breastfeeding altogether.
Sounds great. Now, you're also a specialist or you're specifically trained in sensory food aversion issues, and that's what your presentation will be about. How did this come about? How did you get into that field?
Well, like many lactation consultants, I was facing some babies of infants with sucking difficulties, and I thought, what can we do? Who could I refer those babies to? And then I read some English literature, and I found that some people will send those babies to language speech pathologists, and so I thought, okay, why don't I call some people there in France? So I called one of my friends who's a speech language pathologist, and she said, well, it's not the kind of expertise that we all have, so I'll give you the name of 2 experts, which she did, and I called the 2 of them, and one of them is called Catherine Senez, and she said, oh, that sounds really good, because what I do is I insist that people understand physiology, and physiology is breastfeeding. It's so natural. When you understand how that works, then you can face some issues with suckling and swallowing. So I went into our course, and this was absolutely amazing. We made lots of links, and we've been working together ever since.
Thank you for answering that question, and letting us know how all this came about. Now let's talk about your presentation. And the presentation is titled, Could Breastfeeding Help Overcome Sensory Food Aversion? That's a very intriguing title, and I must say, as I'm a midwife, I didn't really think about that. So this is a new angle for me. So talk a little bit about the presentation.
Well, my idea has always been that if the breastfeeding adventure goes well, then we're more likely to have the child go into the normal relationship with food. And as a mother, I was facing some little difficulties as an individual. I have some food intolerances, or even food that I don't accept myself, and I tried to understand why this happened to me, to my children, if those challenges were big difficulties that needed to be addressed, and if those difficulties could be prevented, if the breastfeeding journey went better. So that was my thought at first, and then working with some babies who really had some suckling difficulties, we've been trying to support them, and then we found out that these babies were in families where there were more feeding difficulties, and when addressing the infant difficulties, we could understand what had happened with the oldest son, or the brother or sister, or the parent, and then little by little, it was like getting a piece of the jigsaw puzzle and seeing, okay, this could go into that, and then if we try and work on breastfeeding and on that journey to make it more, well, enjoyable, maybe the behavior towards the food later on in life could be better. And actually, this has worked. I've been working on that theory, not theory, but thought for the last few years, and I've seen families have a better, an easier approach, or a smoother approach to food, and yeah, food altogether. And you know, we're in France, and food is cultural. We enjoy being around the table together. We enjoy eating different things together, testing lots of things. And if someone is not happy around the table, then socially it's a bit. This person can be apart from the group. So this has been. This was my thought, and well, I don't know if my theory or thought is good, but it's been working so far. So I thought I could share this with other lactation consultants. Why
And
not?
we are so glad you're sharing this, because here I can tell you, I am here situated in the United States, and we always see these pictures of babies, or not babies, not, but small children in France that eat everything. And here we see many American children, not all, I'm saying, but we see quite a few that just eat, like to just pick the white food, like mac and cheese and, things like that. And
Uh-huh.
many parents are always like, how do they do it over there? What's going on? I'm not generalizing. There's, of course, many people here who feed their children very healthy foods, but just it seems like stunning still that small kids in France, and I believe also Spain and other countries there, are much more adventurous when it comes to trying new foods. And I did not know that there could be done something with, during breastfeeding that actually helps kids or later adults to be less picky eaters, right? And maybe then have a better, more healthy lifestyle because they're picking healthier foods that they
Yeah.
may otherwise never
A-
eat.
And you just pointed it out. You mentioned babies or children who tend to be picky and they eat white food. You're right in the middle of the topic. I'm looking forward to giving this presentation because you might learn a few things about it.
Oh, I wish I had that,
It's
that
not.
information
It's
when
not
mine
because
were
they
little.
are. It's not because they were American or they lived in the US or anywhere else in the world. Some children will choose to eat food of a specific color,
Ah,
and we'll understand why.
that is very interesting. Yeah, I can't wait for your presentation. And I said, I wish I had that information when mine were little. I was struggling as well. And so probably are many other parents around the world. Before I let you go, what is it that you help your listeners will get will be able to take away from watching this presentation?
The takeaway message will be force feeding is not the option, but encouraging and repeating simple actions may help the child or the infant get a better sensory approach to food, and this can help with its life altogether. So, well, look, I didn't prepare a take-home message, but it's really we'll understand a few things, and I'm sure your audience will may pick up a few things and say, okay, this reminds me of one child, and maybe this reminds me of another one, and going back to the basics and thinking sensory. We may altogether have a different approach to food and to infant when it's linked to infancy or childhood. We'll see.
Carole, thank you so much for sitting down here with me. That was a pleasure.
My pleasure.
I really enjoyed our conversation here. And the presentation, Could Breastfeeding Help Overcome Sensory Food Aversion, is part of the Gold Lactation Online Conference 2019. And the presentation will be live on April 24th. And to our listeners, if you would like to find out more about this presentation and the other presentations in the Gold Lactation Online Conference, please visit goldlactation.com. Thank you everyone for listening. Bye-bye.